Presented by Francesco Sarracino, and the second by Vini Yasin and Avasar Minan. So Francesco will talk about the Russian exception, how reducing income inequality helps boost the life satisfaction recently in the Russian Federation. So 30 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much also for giving me the opportunity to be with you during this meeting of the lab, which is probably the fifth one I'm attending. And it is always very nice to be in this number. And I'm eager to share my results with you to see also your reactions. What I'm presenting this afternoon is work that I had in progress with Roland Engelhardt and with Edward Panari. And we are quite ambitious as we want to see what explains the trend of life satisfaction in Russia, in particular, what is the role of inequality. Let's go step by step. Are you familiar with this? Well, for those who are maybe jet-lagged, this is the Earth. And since the beginning of our experience, of our existence on the Earth, our mission has been to make our life here better, to make the Earth a better place to live. In recent decades, this meant largely to boost economic growth. Today we spoke a lot about economic growth. Why this? Well, because economic growth brings along a lot of things that are important for well-being. For example, new jobs, it defeats poverty, it improves our health and provides a lot of goods that, after all, can make our life better. In a word, economic growth has been for a long time the main objective to pursue better quality of life. And this is also what governments believe in, because this is often on top of many political agenda. This is what medias are always eager to report, as I don't know of any news where they don't inform us about how well or how bad the economy is doing. And this is also what professors are teaching. Always good. And the message is that promoting economic growth is the way to better lives. Is this true? One of the reasons why measures of subjective well-being, life satisfaction, happiness, have become so prominent in recent years is because they allow us to answer this question. They allow us to check, at the individual level, whether economic growth has indeed improved or is indeed improving our lives. And if you are a bit familiar with this debate on economic growth and subjective well-being, you will know that for a long time the debate has been polarized basically on two opposite views. The first one that says, we don't know what we're talking about because there is no doubt economic growth is going to improve people's lives. There is a number of empirical papers supporting this view. And there's another view, totally opposite, which says, hey guys, it's high time to abandon economic growth as the main policy objective because economic growth per se doesn't improve quality of life. Who is right? Well, as it is often the case, the truth. Me, I am right. As it is often the case, the truth lies in between. The answer is, it depends. It depends on what? Well, economic growth per se can be either good or bad. It can be good if it benefits everybody, or it can be bad if it creates barriers among people. It can create healthy communities, and that is good, or it can weaken the bonds that keep societies together, and this is bad. Not by chance, in some countries, economic growth made people happier. Citizens of Switzerland or of Denmark are consistently reporting high levels of well-being, measure it as you want, both objectively and subjectively. Vice versa, citizens of other countries such as United States or China, are consistently reporting low levels of happiness, or at least over time, their well-being has been either flat, and this is the case of the United States, or declining, as it is the case of China. So, this kind of observation leads to the question, okay, so what does it depend on? What does moderate the relationship between economic growth and subjective well-being? This is the kind of question to which I tried to answer recently, together with Małgorzata Mikucka and Josh Dubrow, who is hiding down in the room. And basically, we came up with the following answer. Economic growth can benefit subjective well-being when it is associated with declining inequality and increasing social capital. Here I'm just showing you a very limited part of our results, where for various scenarios of declining inequality, stable inequality, and growing inequality, we have change of social of trust. So here trust is increasing and trust is decreasing. And we are showing the marginal effect of economic growth on well-being. What we notice is that there is only one region when the two are positively associated. And this is in this case, when inequality is declining and trust is increasing. In all other cases, there is no significant association between economic growth and well-being. I can show you this result in a different way, because we built a map of the world based on this. It's still ongoing, it doesn't look good, but it does the job. Don't get scared. What do we have? Let's start from the Italian flag. Red, white, and green. Actually, it's green, white, and red. Region that goes from white to deeper green are regions where the association between economic growth and well-being are increasingly positive. Regions from white to deep red is the region where the association between economic growth and well-being is increasingly negative. Easy. Then we have two axes, because they look good. Trend of social trust. On the right of the zero, trust is increasing. On the left of the zero, trust is decreasing. And we have trend of inequality, again, above the zero, above the zero, the trend is positive, so inequality is increasing. Below the zero, inequality is decreasing. At this point, we can order our countries from the World Value Survey based on their association between economic growth and well-being, and as predicted by these two variables. Just to give you an idea of what this puzzle shows. Here you probably cannot see, we have China in 1995, China in 2001, and China in 2007. So what this chart shows is that over time, Chinese people reported less and less life satisfaction. And these two axes allow us to read why this has happened. It happened because inequality has been increasing dramatically over near 12 years, while trust has been slightly declining. Another notable case, United States. United States in 2006 is here, 1999 is here, and 1995 is here. As you can see, United States are moving along the border of the white region, where there is no significant association between economic growth and well-being, which is actually what Easterlin speaks about. Why this has happened? According to our computation, this happens because economic inequality has been slightly increasing, and also trust has been slightly increasing. Again, last example, Switzerland, 2007 and 2008, and the previous observation is here. Switzerland is becoming more happy because inequality has been decreasing and trust slightly increasing. Denmark is here. So what I'm trying to tell you is that there is some evidence that when economic growth is associated with decreasing inequality and increasing social trust, then we can expect that it benefits people's well-being or their life. So, our research question: how generalizable are the conclusions from previous research? In particular, what we want to know is whether income inequality and social capital help explain the trends of well-being, also where economic conditions strongly affect people's well-being. Is that clear? Or are you just dreaming about the party after my presentation? Be honest. I will deserve it.
One more.
All right, and we want to answer this question by looking at Russia. Why? Well, because we are in Russia. No, sorry, that's not what I wanted to say. Because there is a good reason for studying Russia. Russia is one of those countries where there is a clearly strong association between economic growth and well-being. Since mid-90s, Russia has been experiencing sustained economic growth that put Russia among the group of fast-growing countries, such as China and India. Now, the main difference compared to China and India is that while in these latter two cases, the association between economic growth and well-being has been negative, and here I'm showing you what I'm speaking about. This is China from 1990 to 2007, World Value Survey data. This is the trend of GDP per capita, or development indicators. This is what happened to life satisfaction in the same period. India, again, trend of GDP per capita and declining trend of life satisfaction. These are two typical examples of the Eastern paradox. What happens in Russia? Who knows the answer? You two cannot answer. In Russia, the two variables are strongly associated. They follow each other very closely. Look at the trend of GDP per capita and look how life satisfaction follows. This association is so strong and typical that even Eastern, commenting the results on Russia and the results more in general on transition countries, admits that transition countries are an exception to his paradox. He doesn't have an explanation for this. So this is why we think that Russia is an interesting case study that can help us investigating whether income inequality and social capital matter for the swings of well-being, even in cases where economic growth and well-being seem strongly associated. What do we know from the literature? Well, the first explanation of the changes of life satisfaction in Russia obviously mention economic growth. Some papers put it plainly that there are few doubts that lack of political freedom and economic dissatisfaction are among the causes that led to the collapse of 1991. But there are also papers showing that after the initial period of collapse from 1995 onward, other things beyond economic growth mattered for Russians' well-being. And here we have a list of possibilities. Rapid political change, which might have an ambiguous effect on well-being, either positive or negative. Positive in case of increasing freedom, negative for post-tanks. Loss of employment, security, and social provisions, which might negatively impact well-being. Social, political, and economic freedom, national pride, income inequality, or social capital. And here I'm focusing mainly on income inequality and social capital. Why? Because income inequality has a pretty much straight impact on people's well-being. The first reason is because rich people derive relatively less utility from higher income compared to poorer ones. So in a society that grows more unequal, where there are a lot of poorer people and few rich people, on average happiness declines. Another reason is that inequality undermines social solidarity, and social solidarity is an important component of people's well-being. At least another reason is that inequality is often associated with crime, riots, violence, social privileges that definitely hamper our political life. When it comes to social capital, there is even more evidence suggesting that it is important for people's well-being. And here I'm not reviewing all the literature, I'm just making it short and giving you only one example, which in my opinion is quite provocative. Do you know who is this guy?
Mussolini? No.
No. He was not an intellectual. I give you an hint. His name is Alois. No, you cannot say it, because you've already seen this slide. Schumpeter.
When you say Alois, and you are an economist.
Right. I am hypochondriac. This is Alois Alzheimer.
Okay.
And well,
I
this, right. Well, there is evidence showing that people experiences less social contacts or more loneliness have twice higher chances to developing Alzheimer's in later stages of life. So, if at least for medical reason, trust me this evening, go and get a beer with your friend. Well, actually, we're having one, but not yet. It's a party, right? So, our question is whether income inequality and social capital help us explaining the swings of life satisfaction in Russia. Of course, controlling for a number of factors. The independent variable is life satisfaction, as measured as how satisfied are you with your life, so you're all familiar with this. The main independent variables are financial dissatisfaction, which is a measure of relative concerns. So it measures how well or bad you're doing compared to people with whom you compare. It is, if you want, a proxy of social comparisons. And it is strongly related at the macro level with inequality, because in a country with high inequality, the chances for establishing comparison with others are higher, and vice versa. Then we have a set of proxies of social capital. We have trust in others, group membership, an index of civicness that's created from these 4 variables. And I'm going fast on this because you are all familiar with the World Value Survey, so I probably don't need to spend much words on this, but we can get back to it. And the last, I have a set of standard socio-demographic controls, which include, in particular, income, national pride, health, and freedom of choice. I'm including, in particular, national pride because previous research from Ronald, Edward, Roberto, and Chris has shown that it actually plays a role in explaining the trends of life satisfaction in Russia. The method is quite straightforward. I'm using a Wasaka decomposition, which is an econometric technique to decompose a difference in life satisfaction, and this is a difference over time between 1995 and 1990, and between 2011 and 1995, to decompose this difference in 2 parts. A part that is due to differences in the levels of the explanatory variables. Basically, this part tells us the importance of the fact that Russians became richer or poorer in a set of variables that we consider as important for well-being. And the second part tells us instead how the coefficients have changed. So how the association between the same variables with well-being has changed over time. This basically tells us how the preferences of Russians have changed. Fine? Let's go to the results. Between 1990 and 1995, Russians lost almost 1 point in life satisfaction on a scale from 1 to 10. And between 1995 and 2011, on average, they recovered 1.7 points, which is quite a lot on a scale from 1 to 10. And if we look at the decomposition, we notice that in the first period, the drop of life satisfaction is almost entirely predicted by changes in the levels of the explanatory variables. This means that the first drop is entirely due to the fact that Russians have become poorer in all those factors that matter for well-being. In the second period, instead, there is a double drop. Part of the recovery of this 1.73 point is due to the fact that Russians got a bit more of what matters for well-being, but another part, almost 50%, a bit less, is due to the fact that Russians have changed their preferences over what makes them happy. Let me show you these results graphically. I'm looking now at what variations of life satisfaction. Here I have some key predictors: freedom of choice, health, pride, social capital, social comparisons, and income. And these are how the changes of this variable over time predict the change of life satisfaction. So in the first period, when life satisfaction dropped, here we see that large part of this drop is due to the fact that Russians became very much dissatisfied with the financial situation. And to a smaller extent, they lost freedom of choice, they lost social capital, while health and the changes in health and pride are very, very small. In the subsequent period, the changes, in the subsequent period, the changes of the increase in life satisfaction is largely predicted again by the fact that Russians became more financially satisfied. They got more freedom of choice and control over their lives. They got better health, a bit more pride in the nation, a bit more social capital, but income is still not significant. This is for what concerns levels. What happens to the preferences of Russians? In the first period, we've seen that this part does not predict any significant change in life satisfaction. In the subsequent period, when preferences are predicting a significant change, what we observe is that, again, the main driver is social comparison, in this case, financial dissatisfaction. This big bar here means that between 1995 and 2011, Russians have been attaching less importance to financial dissatisfaction. Means that social comparison have become less important for Russians' well-being. And by the way, this is quite in line with what you were showing before. At the same time, the importance they attach to income has been increasing. Actually, the importance of all these aspects has been increasing. Social capital, pride, health quite a lot, and freedom of choice. So, summarizing. In the first period, the drop of 10% is explained by a general decrease of all that matters for well-being and by more financial dissatisfaction, while the changes in preferences are not significant. In the second period, this large increase in life satisfaction that more than offset the initial drop is predicted by more of all that matters, more freedom of choice, more health, less financial dissatisfaction, and some change in preferences. Now I want to draw your attention to this. In the first period, when life satisfaction goes down, financial dissatisfaction has been increasing a lot. In the second period, when life satisfaction has been increasing, is the moment when the financial dissatisfaction decreases a lot. And look how this is associated with another variable, inequality. This is the Gini index. Between 1990 and 1995, the Gini index explodes. Inequality has been exploding dramatically over 5 years in Russia. And this is consistent with the picture I'm showing you at micro level. Subsequently, inequality stabilized or slightly declined. And this is the period when indeed life satisfaction recovers. What happens if we divide our sample into income groups? Here I have the first 3 income groups, the middle one, and the upper one. The first thing that you notice is that at the beginning of the period, there wasn't much difference in life satisfaction for the 3 groups. But by the end of the period, the inequality on life satisfaction has increased a lot. What does explain this change? Does the picture change if you look within these income groups? Well, here I'm summarizing the results. In the first period, those who lost the most in terms of life satisfaction, of course, is the lower income group. They lost nearly 14.5% of their life satisfaction. In the second period, they likely recovered it. But the net result is that what they got after 20 years or whatever it is of decrease and increase of economic performance is just a meager 0.3% gain. So the real winners of these 20 years of history are the middle and the upper income group, who gain quite some life satisfaction. Okay, I'm coming to the end. In this case, in any case, the predictors of life satisfaction within groups do not change from the picture I showed you before. If we go group by group, we still find that financial dissatisfaction plays the large part of the story. And we are going to concluding. The level of life satisfaction in Russia depends largely on changes of financial dissatisfaction, which is directly related to income inequality. Here I'm showing you the trend of life satisfaction, and I'm superimposing it with the trend of income inequality. And as you can see, in the moment when income inequality explodes, life satisfaction starts going down. Then income inequality stops, flattens, or even decreases, and this is the moment when life satisfaction starts going up again. This is quite interesting, and this is consistent with what has been found in other famous cases of failure of economic growth to improve people's well-being. For example, the United States and China. Let me give you an example. This is China. I'm showing you China because although it is very different from Russia, it has some aspects in common. They were both economies in transition towards capitalism. They both experienced a drop in their social safety nets. And they both had millions of people suddenly becoming exposed to the forces of the free market. Well, in China, life satisfaction has been declining over time, and this is what happened to Gini. It flattens in around 2001, and this is when life satisfaction started increasing. So what is the main difference with Russia? The main difference with Russia is that in Russia, inequality stopped increasing way earlier. And this might explain why, for example, life satisfaction managed to reach a level higher than the initial one. In China, this happened pretty much late. And probably this is why they are still lagging behind in terms of life satisfaction and not profiting from the sustained economic growth. So, and I'm concluding, the message that I'm getting to is that also in Russia, a country where economic growth is closely associated with well-being, income inequality plays a major role for people's life satisfaction. Therefore, if this message convinces you, what I claim is that in order to promote people's well-being, if governments want to pursue and afford quality of life, then they should adopt a promote and reduce strategy. Promote economic growth and reduce income inequalities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Francesco. Great presentation, as always. And we have two discussants, Ronald Lukard and Christian Welzel. And I suggest that we do it in the reverse order of seniority, which means that Chris starts and Ron continues.
I would suggest that.
Francesco, thank you. Very nice, as always. I actually have no disagreements with either the theory nor the evidence, so I'm totally on your side. The only thing I would say is a couple of additional and probably model extensions where you can go from there. I believe in the storyline completely, and I think the key finding is really the effect of economic growth is definitely conditional. So it only happens when it goes together with equality or less inequality. I think that's pretty clear. You can't get additional support for that point of view if you cite the stuff by Benjamin Radcliffe, who has a book on it's just a different angle, what the welfare state does to happiness. And they show with very convincing evidence that where the welfare state is more extended, where there's more social security and stuff like this, it has a positive impact on life satisfaction. Second point, you actually, well, the easiest and the most straightforward way to show that an effect is conditional is to model an interaction term. So you could do a very easy convincing model in which you predict the change in life satisfaction by economic growth and by, I would reverse it then, and by equality, so Gini inverse, and by the interaction between the two. And what should happen in this model, if you are correct, is that economic growth should have no main effect anymore, and only the interaction term should work, and that should be really strong. And so that would be a model extension. My third remark is actually to ask for a favor. Please cite the article, The China Puzzle, authored by Brockman, Delhai, Hao, Han, and a co-author, because I think what you are showing is providing a perfect confirmation of their theory. They argued with this term, the monetization of happiness. And what they meant with this, and they showed that when the life satisfaction dropped in China, when that happened, life satisfaction was extremely closely tied to financial satisfaction, which we call the monetization, and by a factor 10 more than at the moment when life satisfaction was higher. And what she was saying is actually confirming that very, very strongly now with the Russian data as well. Fourth remark, from there you could now move on, because I think we have a pretty clear causal story here, which you could test and show in a path model that has 3 steps. Inequality increases the monetization of happiness, so ties life satisfaction to financial satisfaction, and that then lowers the life satisfaction. Or put it the other way around, equality decreases the monetization of happiness, and that makes people more satisfied with their lives. I think you have the data across countries and over time to show that this really, really works. Maybe a joint paper at one point.
Why not?
Well, along with Chris, I find this very convincing. It's a very useful contribution.
You're a co-author, right?
I should probably recuse myself on grounds of conflict of interest, but actually, Francesco wrote this himself. I discussed this with him, and we have an ongoing project, but the work presented here is, I would say 90% at least Francesco. What I like about it is, you've got a simple, clear story here about economic growth does increase life satisfaction, contrary to Easterlin, but not only if it is not accompanied by rising inequality. And this reminds me of the presentation this morning by Stefano, where if you have a ice cream cone, that's great. That's your positive contribution of economic growth. You get an ice cream cone. Unless your neighbor gets one that's 4 times as big. And then you have a very unhappy look on your face. So this sorts out the puzzling Easterlin paradox, which doesn't really hold up if you take seriously the 2008 article by Leonard Peterson also, where we find from the data from 80 countries, mostly they did increase in happiness and life satisfaction. It is, you can find selected countries where it doesn't, because things are more complicated. It's not just nothing counts but economic growth. Clearly, that would be a really stupid explanation. The paper concludes that economic growth contributes, but so does democracy, social tolerance, and I would add, far more strongly than we did, income inequality. And along with Chris, I would say, I'm sure you don't believe that it's just inequality. Your paper, your presentation here stresses inequality as the key factor. So it would be interesting to go ahead and parcel out how much is inequality, how much is GNP per capita, and there's an interesting suggestion of maybe it's mostly the interaction between inequality and economic growth, which I'm not completely sure because the time sequence that you show indicates that they can go at different times. That in Russia in particular, huge increase in economic inequality, accompanied by a huge decline. But of course, part of the huge decline, I'm sure, was that people's GNP per capita, their incomes went down hugely. It's not just inequality, but so I would say the puzzle is a little more complicated than just the economic factors. I would say there is a piece linked with freedom and tolerance. They are part of the story too. But I think that the part that you're stressing is a very big plus. The role of inequality is a big factor. And that resonates with my own talk this morning, where I was discussing the pervasive troubling trend toward inequality. It threatens democracy, it destabilizes the political system. It has consequences even the rich would find, if they're smart enough to look ahead, would find disquieting, which is why Warren Buffett thinks we've got to tax him more highly. And this is because of the inefficiency of inequality. If you have economic growth, as we've had in the last 30 years, but it's all going to the top 1%, this is a horribly inefficient. 1% are improving and 99% are not. But also, there is this, as you point out, the 1% who are improving have a diminishing marginal utility of economic growth, so it doesn't even help them very much. So Warren Buffett is not terribly much happy with 40 billion than he was with 20 billion. I strongly suspect there's no perceptible increase in it. So, very nice presentation. I like it so much, I hope you send me your PowerPoint because I'm not really a co-author of this PowerPoint presentation. I'd like to see it. And keep it up.
Thank you very much.
Okay, would you like to answer or select more questions? We still have time for more questions.
Well, yes, we can collect questions because my answers are pretty fast. I appreciate the support and I appreciate the suggestions, which I think can be easily implemented. So I'll do that, definitely. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anna Nemirovska.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a great presentation, as always. In my comment, I'm very supportive to Ron's ideas. Actually, I know pretty well the socio-economic data from... So actually I wanted to tell a couple of words about data from official statistics from Russian Statistical Service. So the data that we have shown from the sample go in line with most of the trends on disposable income, on average income, on salary, on minimum wage and other variables, other indicators of income in Russia in these years. And Gini and rich and poor ratio and balance of income also comes in line. But if you look at the same time, it's much easier to think about this aggregate. At what kind of income groups are more in disadvantageous position or in more disadvantages over the time, if you look at the trend, you may see that, for instance, Russia has experienced 3 harsh economic crises here, which each of them lasted more than 1 year. At that time, different measures of income has slightly dropped or dropped significantly. It depends on the type of the crisis. At the same time, Gini and other levels of inequality also has dropped, also decreased. But if you look at if you decompose according to the 5 or 10 income groups, which groups benefited and which are not benefited from this, you may see that for those who are in the middle groups and in the low groups, they retain the same income levels, almost the same. So this income inequality decrease happens thanks to the high income levels. So it actually leads to the hypothesis that probably first, so people who put more significance into different monetary sources of their subjective well-being, of the happiness. So when they just don't have that, they look into non-monetary sources and replace them without problem. But this works only for low-income groups and for middle groups. So probably it would be interesting to analyze this economic statistics, which is available in open sources, and to see how different social layers, how social stratification dimension works in this. And probably, as we know, that officially Gini coefficient is much times higher that is reported by the state officials. And in the national samplings, so these higher levels just do not get into, they are not surveyed.
Yes, probably I didn't cite my source. The Gini comes from the standardized world income inequality database. So it should be independent from official statistics, national official statistics. But I would appreciate if you could give me at least some references where I could find, possibly in English, this kind of information.
Well, I can translate.
We have one or two more questions, and after that we will proceed to the next lecture. So, Juan, please, over there, and then Rima.
Two very brief questions without the mic. What's your the technique you use for the components of the growth rate, levels and
Actually, I'm sorry, but
you don't? Okay.
can you repeat?
No,
The microphone doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
I understand that.
It's out of power.
The technique you use for analyzing the components of the growth rate based on levels, and, is that similar, or is it Kitagawa's very old article on the components of a rate growth? That was, I think, in the 60s or so.
I think the article you're citing informed this technique, because this technique in particular has been developed contemporary by, at the same time, by Wasaka and Blinder in 1973, I guess.
I think they are based on the same as Kitagawa's.
I think so.
And the second question, very simple also, for the Gini index, what level did you use? 1%, 5%, 10%? Which one did you use? Because the interpretation about inequality will vary very much depending on which is the, in Human Development Index, they use even two different ones.
I'm not sure if I understand correctly your question, because the Gini index that I used just varies between 0 and 1, so or 0 and 100.
The delta, the longer distance from the line to the...
Sure, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Rima, you have to speak up.
I really enjoyed your presentation, thank you. My question, I'm just wondering if you could kind of speculate. I'm wondering, when you think about the different countries and the places where it seems to be mattering more for life satisfaction, and I was thinking about, if my neighbor gets richer than me, I would care. But if the people like the Warren Buffetts, like, they're so far from, we don't even know, like, that he made 20 billion more, most of us wouldn't know anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you see all this being experienced on the ground level in different ways in these different countries? Is that,
I'm not sure I understand correctly your question. I think you're asking me about the fact that people can compare themselves to different groups of people in different countries over time. Is this your
well,
question?
like, why in Russia, like, why would, on the ground, how would it be felt differently than in China or the United States?
How would it feel differently?
Well, I think it'll feel differently because in Russia, in the second period, the economic inequality was declining, and people will certainly feel it, I guess. I'm not sure.
I guess it's a perceptual question, right? How do people how is it that people realize that the inequality is increasing? I guess that's the question.
Yeah.
How do people see that? I mean,
Or because in some ways you can't see it, right?
I guess
Well,
cars.
Cars, mobile phones, they used to be very rare. Now everybody has them. Everybody can, or almost anybody can buy a relatively nice car. So this is a huge change from the 90s.
well, now I understood your question. Yes, my speculation is that media do play a huge role. Media and advertisement do play a huge role in boosting the perception of differences, of inequality. If you look at windows of expensive shops and you look at windows in your neighbors, you perceive that there are these differences. If you look at television, you see a world that probably you cannot, or is far away from you, or that you cannot achieve. If you interact over the internet, this would also show you a world made of beautiful life, and you're just always in your usual routine. There is a lot of evidence, empirical evidence, showing that television watching, the use of social networks, online social networks, actually are increasing social comparisons. So,
Well, unfortunately we can't, because we need to proceed to the next lecture. I'm very sorry, Vladimir Saboyevich.
Просто для сведения короткое, полминуты.
Okay, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I just want to attract your attention to the recent work by Vladimir Gempelson and Daniel Treisman, where they demonstrate the great misperception of inequality all over the world in many countries. It's just like preprint at this moment, but it's available so you can see, and probably it can contribute to your thinking on these issues, because there are questions very relevant, it seems to me. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Well, Francesco, thank you very much. Now we proceed